Goodwill employees, what's the strangest thing you've found? My uncle's friend, let's call him Hank, had an old neighbor that was moving and told him that if he wanted to come by and take a look at anything in his garage, he would give him a good deal to lighten his load. In the garage was an old engine block and a beat-up, broken-down Harley-Davidson motorcycle amongst other junk. He offered the man $400 for the Harley, and the man said that he would give it to him for $200 if he took the engine block with him. Hank took the bike, wheeled it over to his house, while disposing of the engine block with some buddies. He tried to find a VIN number on the bike to identify the model, but he can't find anything. Usually, the VIN numbers are in a universal spot on a bike, but the only numbers that he found were a P17 under the seat. He calls Harley-Davidson and asks them if they know where he could find a VIN, or if they knew anything about the YEP 17 inches the second he said EP 17. The man on the phone told him that they were going to send a representative down to take a look at the bike. A man came down dressed pretty casually in jeans and a t-shirt. He took a look at the bike and simply asked Hank how much he purchased the bike for. Hank told him he got it for $200. The man apparently made a phone call and came back and offered Hank $20,000 for it. Hank demanded to know what EP-17 was, but the man played dumb and said that there is a small chance it was rare military model or something, but they were unsure. They offered this amount on the spot, telling him it very well could be a replica and be worth nothing. Knowing he could have something special, Hank worked it up to $50,000, and the man went to a bank and returned 20 minutes later with a manila envelope with $50,000 in fresh bundles of $10,000 each. After happily giving him the money, the man had a flatbed truck waiting that took the bike away. When Hank went to go give him the keys, the man told him to keep them. Before he hopped in his car to take off, Hank asked the man why he didn't want the keys. The man just responded, "This bike won't be needing a key." That bike now sits in a Harley-Davidson museum amongst 16 other custom-made bikes, personally manufactured for Elvis Presley. Story 2. When I was about 8, I got $1 to spend at the thrift store. I found a small wooden doll chair that I liked and bought it for like 25 cents. Once I got it home, I saw that my own last name was etched into the bottom of the chair. Turned out my uncle had made it in woodworking shop when he was a kid. It had been sold at a garage sale, then eventually ended up at the thrift shop. Story 3. I collect Cabbage Patch Kids, a type of doll that was very popular in the 1980s IDS, although they still make them today. I used to stop by the thrift store pretty often to check their toy section for Cabbage Patches. And one day I found a boy Cabbage Patch with a bow in his hair, wearing a backwards dress that was so long in the front it covered his feet. He had a cape on that matched the dress, which covered his feet from the back as well. He looked good, and even though the clothes were odd, more than 50% of the Cabbage Patch I find at thrift stores are naked, so any clothes are great. I actually spend far more on doll clothes than I do on the dolls themselves. Anyway, I brought the little guy home and pulled his dress up to check the signature on his butt, because I can tell by the color of the signature what year he was made. What I found freaked me the duck out. The doll's legs were soaked in a dark red, brownish stuff. I tried to tell myself it wasn't blood, but I knew it was. I put the doll in the bathtub, put on some gloves, and started to scrub him. I still have the doll, but he sits on the shelf. I don't want to touch him. Story 4. I found, and bought for $20, a painting of two men riding through the Old West on horses with revolvers being chased by a somewhat distant group of lawmen or bandits. The best part, the two men are Tupac and Bob Marley, found in Slidell, Louisiana. Story 5. Once found the display model of a hoodie at a thrift store. Instead of being a solid color or having some standard design, it was printed with the advertising shtick. On the left breast pocket area, it has an arrow pointing up and the words, "Stitched-in drawstring doesn't get lost." On the other side, an arrow pointing in, "No stick zipper," "Anti-fuzzing liner," "Deep pockets," "Antimicrobial fabric." Story 6. I was a manager of GoodWill for a while. I got a few good donations, the best being 1. A taser gun, didn't get put up for sale, obviously. 2. A purse with substances, straight into my pocket. 3. Owls. We got a U-Haul truck filled with owl-themed decorations. And then the Bildos. We received so many sex toy. Story 7. I worked at a thrift store in Alberta. Sorting was always the most fun job. It sucked that about 60% of stuff people donated ended up in a landfill. Some of my best, or worst, finds while sorting. A pair of semen-stained undies, no lie. Some dude donated a sweet Gary Fisher mountain bike that was worth a bunch of money. Money in pockets was always the best. Never more than $11 for me, though. Brand new pair of Blundstones and sorrel boots. This one dude bought 6 turkey basters one day, and when asked why he was buying 6 turkey basters, he said, "Because you only had 6, and walked out. Love thrift stores. Story 8. I know a guy that bought a 1957 Fender Stratocaster at a Goodwill for $20. The guy at the counter apologized to him because it had 2 broken strings. He said his hands were shaking as he gave the guy the money. That crap never happens to me. Story 9. I found and purchased a used spandex gimp mask that was mistakenly put in the Halloween costumes section. 99 cents for a lifetime of creepy scenarios to contemplate. Story 10. Not a thrift store, but Craigslist. More or less the same. The guy listed something like 5 different game systems. Sega Genesis, CD, Master System, Game Gear, maybe a random N64 too, with 40 or so games total, for $75. This was back in my eBay reselling days, and he was only about 2 miles from my college, so I jumped on it. Show up at the house, and he looks like your stereotypical shut-in. Probably about 35 years old, large fellow, thick glasses, lived with parents, acts a bit off, whatever, he seems happy, but I'm just trying to paint the picture. So he has all the systems in his room and tells me to come up if I want to try them out. I walk into his room. It's a time vault from the 19th. The posters, the old school TV, etc. Words fail to describe how it was so 19th, but in addition to not having anything newer than maybe 20 years, it just felt that era, and it was damn spotless. I don't know much about mental illnesses, but he definitely had something. Anyways, we fire up a few systems and play for a bit. I was thinking maybe he just really wanted somebody to play with, but he declined the offers to play, so I gave him his $75 and went on my way. I play the systems for maybe a few weeks, but I was busy in school and needed money. So as I planned, I sold off 95% of the stuff. But in going through some of those Master System games to make sure the cases weren't empty and the instructions were there, a little baggie with maybe 3 or 4 white rocks falls out. I'm no addict, but have seen substances before. Yep, this 35-year-old with the mental capacity of maybe a 10-year-old somehow had substances rocks in his game cases. Story 11. $10 box of old electronic junk at a garage sale, alarm clock, CB walkie-talkies, analog multimeter, battery charmer, etc. Oh, and a Roland TB 303. Mint, fully working. Sold on eBay for many dollars. Story 12. Well, this was more a yard sale than anything else, but a stuffed, as in taxidermized or taxidermized, whatever, raccoon for $20. How could anyone resist? Story 13. I found a 3COM 26 port managed switch, 24 ports and 2 gigabit ports, at the GoodWill for $10. Admittedly, it constantly rebooted itself, but a firmware update fixed all that. Story 14. I just paid 25 cents for a t-shirt that says, I wanted to become a cop, but I decided to finish high school instead, but I'm too paranoid to wear it out in public. My luck, I would get stopped while wearing it. Story 15. I went to school with a girl who brought an open bottle of strawberry lube that she bought at GoodWill. It was opened when she bought it. All day in class, she was constantly eating it. Said it tasted great. I was appalled. What if some man pleasure himself into it? Story 16. My best friend and I went into this old thrift store that has the craziest, most random junk in it. In one corner, sitting on an old dresser, were these 2 cute little stuffed frogs lying on their tummies. I went to go pick them up, and when I flipped them over, I discovered one had a little frog junk, and the other had a little frog pussy and boobs. On the male frog's chest, there was a little pocket. I laughing with my friend and trying to figure out what they were for, since I can't imagine they were made as toys for children. They were handmade as far as I know, since I couldn't find the tag. The only idea we could come up with is that they were made as a way to teach people about safe sex. And perhaps they used frogs as a way to make sex seem less scary or more understandable. Needless to say, we got them. Story 17. I worked at a place that would collect and ship durable goods for charity, usually things like clothes and small furniture. We once received a large cardboard box, close to 8 cubic feet. Inside was completely stuffed with packing paper, except for the very bottom where there was a horse riding helmet. Gifts from the one precinct. Story 18. My sister and I were in a thrift store looking for old leather-bound books to use in her wedding centerpieces. Shoved in between some atlases, I found a book on sex etiquette. I opened it to a random page, and it was the funniest thing I'd ever read. I was laughing so hard that people were staring. Best of all, there was an inscription in the front cover. Remember, you can always say no. I couldn't convince my sister to use it in her centerpieces, though. I stashed it behind some dictionaries and went back to buy it the next day. I'm going to add my own inscription and give it to her as a shower gift next month. I am the best sister ever. Story 19. I, too, love to peruse thrift stores. Grew up in poverty. Just never got out of the habit, even though our household is now easily upper middle class. My 2 favorite purchases to date, a London Fog trench coat in brand spanking new condition exactly in my size. $2. Bonus. I found nice, nearly new Swiss Army knife in the left pocket. Someone's probably going to hit me for this. In a box of beaten to crap books from the 1920 and 1930, all in horrible condition, I found both a copy of The Cabinet of Irish Literature, Volume 2, original 1880 print with all illustrations intact, and an 1894 first edition of Kipling's The Jungle Book, all illustrations intact. Both had suffered some damage to the covers and needed to be rebound, but were more or less in good condition. I knew nothing about old books at the time, being only 20 years old, but on a hunch, I bought both of them for 50 cents each. A year later, I finally met someone who worked in old books, and he brokered a sale on commission of the Kipling, which eventually went for just shy of $3,800. He never was able to figure out how much the cabinet was worth, and it is still sitting in my library. Story 20. I used to work at a GoodWill as a donation attendant too. I don't know specifically what was the strangest, but there were a few things that I remember. One time someone donated a cigar box filled with shaved hair. It was wrapped in a pink ribbon, and there were sparkly children's stickers stuck to the lid on the inside. That was probably the most physically disgusting. One of the most random donations was a passenger doorless car with no seats. It was a crafty 1984 Honda that smelt horrific inside, like someone soaked the car in vinegar and piss and then steamed, dried it with exhaust and farts. The guy who donated said it was on his property for over a decade, so he rented a truck and towed it to our GoodWill, and it sat in the parking lot for like 2 months and became a home toilet for stray cats. The most disturbing was an uphaul full of trash bags full of stretched little girl clothes that was donated by a super pedo-looking creepy fat dude. I'll tell you what, I'm unemployed, broke, and on the verge of becoming homeless, but I don't think I would take another job at GoodWill. Story 21. Went into a charity shop with a female friend in the middle of a modeling shoot and found a Louis Vuitton handbag for £4 sterling. She has a thing for handbags and knew that it was the real deal, not some marketplace fake. Checked it out when we got home. Retails at over £1,000 sterling. Along with our modeling fees, it was a very profitable day. Story 22. When I worked at GoodWill, sex toys and designer clothes were quite normal to see in the donation bins. Not so normal. A box full of live snakes, a 2-liter bottle full of piss, and a veteran in pickup truck dropping off 20 boxes of Harlequin romance novels. Story 23. Not a GoodWill story, but similar. After the 11th of September, people sent tons of donations to Greater New York for the relief effort. Little did they know there were hardly any wounded to be treated, but still, workers on the pile needed some stuff. Well, it had to be sorted and stored somewhere, and that was in some military warehouses across the river in Bayonne. They needed help sorting this stuff, so a few dozen of us from my company spent the day helping out. Most of the stuff was actually suggested, or at least not too outlandish, like workboats, gloves, masks, but some of the stuff. Remember, this was a disaster in Manhattan, a set of several dozen speculums. If you don't know the word, Google it. Many bottles of all kinds of medications, ointments, bandages, some expired, some not. Someone cleaned out the paint shelf in their garage and mailed it. A hatchet. What the heck? At least a few sex toys, etc. Story 24. The only good things I ever got were a red shirt that says, "Everything tastes better with ketchup," a special Olympics t-shirt. I know I'm in a hole. Dragon Heart on VHS for $1. A Buffalo Bills Super Bowl hat. They never won a Super Bowl. A Billy Joel, Elton John tour shirt. Story 25. When my brother was 6, he had a bicycle that he was completely in love with. It was black with aggressive red flame decals, big rubber hand grips, and glow-in-the-dark beads clipped to the spokes of the wheels. One day, he and my dad biked to the park. They leaned their bikes up against the fence and went to hang out on the play structure. 15 minutes later, they turned around. His bike was gone. Stolen. About 10 years later, we were walking back to the car after going out to eat, and we passed a GoodWill on the way. Then we saw something in the window and froze. A child's bicycle, black, with red flame decals, big rubber hand grips, and glow-in-the-dark beads clipped to the spokes of the wheels. Story 26. I found a giant stuffed rideable tiger. It was $5. You better believe I bought it. I'm still not sure if it was the best or worst purchase I've ever made. Story 27. I had just moved to a new city in December 2008 and was furniture hunting at a nearby value village. To my surprise and amazement, I found a fresh, unopened copy of Windows Vista Ultimate among the usual piles of thrift store crap. Thinking it was a joke, I passed it by at first, but kept coming back to it, half-heartedly intent on buying it. Was it an elaborate ruse? A virus-laden disk cleverly repackaged into an authentic Windows box, waiting for an unsuspecting purchaser to install it and turn her computer into a bomb? Did the refugees working the stockroom even realize what they had on their hands? For that price, they must have, whatever. I overcame my apprehensions, bought it, cracked open the package, and installed it. Yep, it was real. Yep, it was crap. It was Vista after all. And at $4, it was still overpriced. Story 28. I also used to work at GoodWill. Probably the strangest we got was either the GIMP mask, which we hoped was for costume, or the giant junk costume that inflated through a small fan and was about 6.5 feet fall, complete with balls with painted-on hairs. Story 29. My ex-girlfriend and her grandmother frequented old thrift stores for clothing and handbags. The grandmother had bought her some big old red bag for like $10. My ex must not have been fond of it because she didn't touch it for like 3 months. Finally, she uses it one night, checks the side pocket, and there's $2,000 inside. Story 30. My dad has a hobby. where he shops at stores like GoodWill and buys electronics and records that he knows he can later sell on eBay for a lot more money. His best find ever was an original pressing of the Beatless Yesterday and Today butcher cover. That crap's worth hundreds, thousands of dollars, and there it was, sitting in a Tupperware box for 25 cents. It had a stain from like a milkshake or something on the back, but it was still worth a crap ton of money. My dad nearly had a heart attack. Apparently this album is the holy grail of record collectors, and here it was, sitting in a Goodwill in Fort Collins, Colorado. Needless to say, bricks were crap and L's were had. Story 31. A few years back, I was looking for some cheap Halloween costume ideas, and for the price of $1, I became the proud owner of a signed copy of Carrot Top's Junk in the Trunk. Unfortunately, it was signed for someone named Erica, and I am not an Erica, so I'm waiting to make friends with a girl with that name so I can give her the best Christmas present ever. Story 32. I did community service at the charity center for a few months. I've found douches, opened. The book Dancing with Cats, diabetes testing strips, not new at all sorts of gross stuff. You'd be amazed by the stuff the sorters send upstairs to go on the shelves. You'd also be amazed by the amount of stuff people donate. Very strange. Story 33. My girlfriend's mom worked at Goodwill and called me to let me know that they had gotten some action figures that were still in the package. I'm a toy collector. I expected the worst, but when I got there, someone had donated the first 2 series of the Muppets figures that were made by Palisades, Simpsons figures from the early 2000s, and a complete set of McFarlane's Twisted Fairy Tales, all for $3 a piece. I spent about $50 on all of them. Sold McFarlane's figs, 6 of them, for $100. Some of the Muppets figures go for $50 each, yet I got them for about $30 for the lot. Best haul ever. Story 34. I was at Goodwill looking for presents for a crafty Christmas party, ugly sweaters, gag gifts, and alcohol, where my friend found a framed poem entitled I Love Boys. That same run, I found a salmonella plushie and some other crap. I need to go there more. Story 35. I did volunteer work at a pawn shop for a few months. We got in some really nice clothing in new condition every now and again. We had some fantastic jackets, really expensive jeans, designer crap that was just flat out donated. We once got this t-shirt in horrible condition, faded, some light stains, couple small holes, that had some relatively unknown old band on it, but the design was neat. The rule was, if there's large holes or stains, we give it to another organization. Well, I showed this shirt to my boss, and he told me, put it on the rack, some hipster will buy it. Seattle, hipsters everywhere. Sure enough, gone in a few days. Story 36. Cyanide. I don't know what it was supposed to be, but it was a jar with some weird brand name, and the only other writing on it was warning. Very poison contains cyanide. Story 37. I used to work at a thrift store sorting donations too. The strangest thing I ever found was a hand-sewn blanket made out of worn-out women's underwear, pantyhose, bras, and shoe inserts. On the back, underside of the blanket, the person had sewn in mesh pockets and put clumps of their hair in it. Nobody will ever see this, but I wanted to share. I also found tons of sex toys, semen-stained sheets, used pads, tampons hidden in shame and purse pockets, fake green cards, awkward photos. Once somebody donated a bottle of Kai, and we took a photo of me squeezing a line of it down a giant junk. Ah, memories. Story 38. I haven't found anything I would call strange as a customer. Usually the oddities are the clothing stuff like 18th-style V-neck sweaters with an awkward image such as 2 stick figures holding hands at a golf course. I have found some good deals though. 8 effects pedals for $5, worth $100. Vectrex with box and 4 games, $15, worth $75. 59-key MIDI keyboard, $15, worth $60. Story 39. I found a Macintosh Classic for $20. The hard drive hadn't been erased and was filled with vintage Mac games from the 18th. There was even an icon of boobs without a name that popped up a reformatting hard disk. Dialogue when you opened it. Story 40. This Halloween, I went to a thrift store looking for costume ideas. As I was looking in the toy section, I saw a cool Optimus Prime helmet for $2 in really good condition, new. It wasn't very comfortable to wear, but seemed cool. I bought it just for craps to show friends as it was in good condition. When I got in the car, I realized it had a bunch of voice modulation and other sound features. I looked it up online. Retails for $60. I thought I did pretty well and went to Halloween parties as Fremitus Prime, the frat robot. Story 41. My old boss found a pile of AGS routers. Bought one and found it had a config on it to a top-secret GOVT facility. Turned out they did a hardware swap and just copied the configs so the words were live. We were security consultants with some friends in the right places, so we made some phone calls. End result, the FBI swarming a small-town Goodwill and carting off the routers in their black vans. And some management changes at the secret GOVT facility. Story 42. Sorted toys donated to Toys for Tots while in the Marines. People dropped off donations at banks. grocery stores, firehouses, etc. They were all brought a central location for sorting and distribution. Any nonprofit could request toys by age group and gender. Most went to churches in the ghetto. Sorting was uneventful, apart from finding fireworks, steak knives, canned vegetables, dishes, winter jackets also. We weren't allowed to distribute toy guns or weapons, so all the Nerf dart guns were used for massive shootouts, elaborate ambushes, etc. We were active duty Marines, remember? Epic Nerf wars. Story 43. My dad's friend, when he was a kid, used to climb around in the GoodWill bins because he was small enough to fit inside. He found a spear gun in a bin once, complete with extra spears. This was a legit one for spearing sharks, I'm guessing. He said because of his age, he could barely pull back the bands to arm it. After he shot a spear into his garage door, his mother saw it and took it away from him. Story 44. I'm an amateur belly dancer. One day I was at GoodWill going through the Halloween stuff when I ran across a real belly dance costume, not a cheap Halloween costume. I bought it with a quickness and had it appraised. It's a pharaonics costume worth about $500. I got it for $17. Story 45. I used to work at GoodWill. One day this chick showed up who was a clear hoarder. Trash had piled up to the roof of her car and she was seriously addicted to KFC. There were months worth of empty chicken buckets. Anyways, she handed me 2 plastic trash bags full of donations and said, they've only been used once. I couldn't comprehend why a hoarder would donate anything to GoodWill until I opened the trash bags. They were damn full of discarded catheters and syringes. Needless to say, they went straight to the dumpster. Story 46. I found 800-year-old pieces of pottery at yard sales, which I bought and then sold to collectors for thousands. Once I found, no joke, a Neolithic stone dagger at an estate sale worth about $50,000 in box labeled arrowheads, $2 each. Story 47. My friend George found $50 in a shoe last year while we were at a small thrift store. Of course, he decided to keep it, but we agreed that the moral thing to do would be to put the find back into the thrift system. He then used the money to buy a one-piece purple jumpsuit with gold dragons on the side and back, one of the more badass things I've seen in my life. Story 48. Last year, I was searching through a thrift store with my roommate for some Christmas decorations. We saw a wreath that was still in its box. After opening the box to check on the wreath, a VHS slid out that was called the Bear Wench Project. A few seconds of thinking made me realize it was an escort parody of the Blair Witch Project, and we quickly purchased the wreath. Great movie also. Story 49. I am the king of freaking cashmere. I can walk into any thrift store and just touch the sweater aisle while walking, and if there is any cashmere, it's mine. Sometimes I have to stop when some merino wool is trying to fake me out, but that's nice too. For $7, you can have some nice sweaters, or sell them online for $50. Story 50. Found a plush beaver costume made for a toddler at the GoodWill outlet store. Never been to a GoodWill outlet? It is basically the leavings from other GoodWills just thrown into giant plastic rolling troughs. You pick through the stuff like raccoons at a dumpster, and then you have your stuff weighed so you can buy it by the pound for basically nothing, and it is awesome. Story 51. I once met a guy at a GoodWill store who was an expert at recognizing real gold and silver items sold at GoodWill, buying them for a couple of bucks and selling them at a couple of hundred to jewelry stores. This hobby is what got him to stop playing lottery. Story 52. A few months ago at a GoodWill, I saw one of them large screen TVs circa about 1990. It had a crappy picture and had to weigh literally hundreds of pounds. Who the heck would buy that? Story 53. I was organizing donations for a big charity sale, kind of like a cross between GoodWill and a yard sale. Among the donations was an opened box of gits. The gits were then stolen by a girl who was doing community service at the sale for probation. Story 54. On a few separate occasions, I found old async modems for iceries, etc. that were on sale for $5. What makes this so awesome was to buy these modems new at the time, late 1990. They cost over $1,000. I ended up selling them to my customers for around $800 each. Story 55. My friend worked at a GoodWill, and one time an old man asked him if they accepted yarn. My friend said yes, and the old man gave him a box. Turns out my friend mistakenly thought the man said yarn when he actually said adult films. The guy had donated a box full of vintage adult films. Weird stuff. Story 56. Back in the day, I owned and loved playing that stocks and bonds game. In fact, it inspired me to write my very first computer program for the Commodore VIC-20. Story 57. A crewneck sweater with a picture of a cat reading a book called How to Attract Backyard Birds, and surrounded by birds. The back of the book has an About the Author section with a picture of a cat smoking a pipe. I wear it pretty damn often. Story 58. I worked in a charity shop a few years ago. The one that really stuck in my mind was a broken set of dentures. We had a free collection service, so a lot of people would just use it as a way to dump their junk. GoodWill store workers, what is something you wish people stopped donating? Cleaning out my senior parents' place, we tried to donate a very expensive built-in TV stand made of oak. Turns out flat screens don't fit in them, and they never get sold. Story 2. I remember a while ago I saw a side news story covering how a bunch of charity places were asking people to stop donating book copies of 50 Shades of Grey. I seem to recall one store had enough copies they made a book fort out of them. Story 3. Don't donate unwashed clothes. You know the stank that most GoodWill stores have? They don't wash donations before putting them out. They just go straight on the racks. Don't donate any clothing that's stained or has holes in it. These items don't sell and will likely be thrown out. Don't donate used socks or underwear. Don't donate worn-out shoes, smelly shoes, or solo shoes. Do not donate medicine. GoodWill cannot take old medicine. Don't donate broken items or items missing a lot of pieces. The store has to spend time, which is money, sorting and throwing those out. This includes dishes and cookware, even with little chips or just a loose handle or a missing lid. Donated dishes should be clean, dry, and carefully packaged so they won't break. Generally, if your electronic device is older than 10 years, the store is probably not going to be able to sell it. 5 years for TVs. The exception is very well kept and well-packaged game consoles. Do not donate half-filled cans of paint from your garage. Just don't. Do not donate your stack of old Reader's Digest magazines from 1994 that was in your bathroom collecting poo particles for years. Don't donate used, honestly don't donate new makeup, mouthwash, cleaners, or pretty much anything liquid. Finally, while it may feel easy and cheaper for some, it's best to use boxes instead of garbage bags for donations, even clothing donations. People tend to mistake donations for garbage if they're in trash bags. Also, sometimes people grab the wrong bag and the center gets a bag of literal garbage instead of donations. Not pleasant. Story 4. I haven't worked there in over a decade, but garbage. People would dump bags and bags of garbage in front of the store overnight, and I mean crap that no reasonable person would ever consider to be anything but garbage. Busted up concrete, rusty metal, basically crap they didn't want to pay to have hauled away and couldn't be ducked to take all the way to the dump. Story 5. Obligatory not GoodWill, but a volunteer at an actual non-profit thrift store. Broken, filthy things. We have to pay for garbage pickup so your donation actually costs the charity money. No, we don't repair stuff for liability and other reasons. No, that box of mangy books stinking of mildew will not make some avid reader happy. Planned obsolescence things. The number of Apple 30-pin docks and clocks and other gizmos I see each week. Or cordless phone sets when people discover replacing the dead battery packs costs more than just buying a whole new cordless phone set. Compact fluorescent light bulbs. Please stop. How nice you switched to LED, but nobody buys use of fluorescent lamps. And since they're classified as hazardous waste due to mercury, we are back to your donation actually costs the charity money since we have to properly dispose of them. Story 6. So many things. I have to say these shops are not somewhere you should dump your trash. No one wants broken toys and chewed books. We are not ungrateful, but it costs us to dispose of these things. I do not want to handle your dirty, torn underpants. I almost had a serious injury when one donor wrapped up blades from a blender in a towel and dumped them in a bag full of clothes. Please don't do that. Story 7. Not a GoodWill employee, but I recently joined a few decluttering and organizing groups on Facebook to get more motivated about decluttering my house. And you would be really surprised by the number of people who think it's okay to donate used underwear. I honestly didn't realize that people would even consider doing that, but apparently they do. I feel really bad for the thrift store employees who have to sort them out and discard them. Story 8. Not a GoodWill employee, but work for a similar company. Please do not donate your garbage. People donate broken toys with jagged edges and other items all the time, not realizing that these things are unsafe and completely unusable. People often genuinely find it easier to drop their garbage off to us, rather than at the dump. Donation centers are not the dump. If we have to handle your garbage, that takes a lot of manpower away from processing usable goods, which wastes a lot of time and money that would otherwise go toward the greater good. In a nutshell, donating total garbage takes away from those in need. Also, it's nasty. Speaking of nasty, be sure to check the pockets in your clothes before donating. Around this time of year, we find a metric craton of used tissues and cough drops hidden inside pockets. Our employees get sick pretty frequently from handling so much product. Please don't make it harder on us. Most importantly, no one wants your soiled clothing. No, children in India do not need your skid-marked underwear, heavily soiled clothing, and those marked by bodily fluids. Looking at you, ladies who don't wear underpants and then donate their favorite jeans, cannot be recycled and go directly into the garbage. Story 9. I remember about 10 years ago reading that charity shops were stopping accepting VHS tapes because there was such a glut of them. One person complained that they'd enjoyed getting 5 VHS tapes for £1 sterling, which was pretty much missing the point. VHS are large and bulky. take up storage space, and the staff still have to process them, all for 20 pence each. Nice for him. Not so good for the workers and charity that's supposed to be benefiting, and probably why they stopped accepting them. Not to mention that half those tapes probably would have gone unsold and cost money to dispose of. Of course, nowadays, most of those worthless mass-market VHS tapes are probably landfill, and it's 15-year-old DVDs that my local branch of sex is selling for 50 pence each. Story 10. Not an employee, but a regular thrift store shopper. Personalized items. I'm talking about wedding things, shirts, and anything with names on them. I found a memorial shirt one time, and I was wondering why someone would donate something like that. Story 11. Not an employee, so definitely not a company policy, but please actually check to make sure video games and movies you don't want work before you donate them. Yes, it's for charity, but unlike used game stores, these places don't have machines of their own to test them all out on. It's not uncommon to go through the aisle, find a cheap copy of a game you want, pop it in, and it just not start. This makes avid collectors like me not want to go to these stores. I'll deal with a beat-up box or a missing instruction booklet, but the disc needs to be working. This should be common knowledge, but somehow it isn't. No, I can't and won't bother hiring someone to fix your scratched discs. Nobody wants them. Story 12. Electronics without their cords. Seriously, this happens a lot. About half the electronics we got. Likewise, things that require a remote to work, but you didn't include the remote. Story 13. Folks, go through your stuff before you donate. I once found a memorial album someone had made for a woman who had died, and another time I found an old friendship book full of names and addresses. Really made me wonder what the people who worked in the charity shop were thinking. Story 14. I used to work for the Salvos, and early on in my tenure there, we would get loads of these bootleg DVDs people would pick up in bail. Those always ended up in the bin because the packaging was just a flimsy plastic envelope, and the label printing quality was awful. We also ended up with a few tarot card sets, which we couldn't sell because we were part of a Christian organization. I ended up taking them home. I've never actually seen a tarot set for card games there or in any other op shop, but those would probably be okay to sell since they have secular imagery such as farmers and market scenes on them. Story 15. Not an employee, but a common thriftier. Please stop donating used underwear. Bras, I can kind of overlook if they are still in good condition, but no one wants to buy your skid-marked briefs or bleached-out panties. That's just gross. Old box TVs I think are fine as I like to turn them into aquariums. Also, stop donating really used mattresses. They are usually walleyed out, stained suspiciously, and in my area likely teeming with bedbugs. The bedbug issue caused most of my local thrift stores to deny mattresses and sofas outright. Also, please don't donate baby strollers and car seats over 10 years old. Safety regulations for such has changed a lot, and you might be putting someone's innocent child in danger by not just throwing it out. Story 16. My GoodWill store always seems to get golf clubs donated. Problem with that is, they try and hide them all the way in the back corner under a bunch of other things. I live in a city that has a bunch of retirees, and there are 5 major golf courses within 20 miles. They get some really nice clubs from time to time. Got a nice $500 set of Callaways for $20. Resold it for $150. Story 17. I volunteer at a cat shelter. Please stop donating us expired food. I throw away maybe half of the food that's donated. During Christmas time, someone donated cans of food from 2011. We recently got a really used bathrobe, used boots, shampoo bottles with only a little bit left in it, a fur coat that we donated to a local artist, lots of self-help books. Is that a message? Boxes of books with dirt inside of them, a garlic press, bar stools, cat cushions smelling like pee, 100 of empty pills bottles, and various stuff so dirty and disgusting I had to wear gloves to go through it. If you're not sure if we need it, just call us. Story 18. The thing to understand is that for a lot of people, donating is an easy way to get rid of crap. They would otherwise have to pay money to dump at a landfill, and at the same time, get a receipt for donation that they can use off their taxes. Anyone giving crap to GoodWill probably knows that GoodWill isn't hurting for money. You have to be rolling in money to have thousands of retail collection centers, and then even more actual stores, as well as their wholesale, by the pound final sales locations. They get nonprofit tax status on $5 billion in revenue. Story 19. Not an employee, but a thrift store shopper, and no stores around here, GoodWill or otherwise, will accept furniture anymore because they're packed to the rafters with it. The people I've talked to say that the stuff does sell, but there's just so much, and they literally have no more room to store any. Story 20. We call them charity shops in the United Kingdom. I'm guessing it's the same deal. If you're donating anything with pockets, please take a second to remove your used tissues. It grosses us out. We don't want anything that's broken or doesn't work. We don't want Christmas decorations before November's. We don't have a lot of storage space to keep them for 8 months. We don't want your underpants or socks. Story 21. I'm not a GoodWill worker, but I regularly donate items to them or to a local women's shelter. Both of them have a policy to never take old computer equipment because no one buys them. People dump them off there after hours anyways. If you have old electronics, please take them to a proper disposal facility, your county, parish. Whatever government should have a dedicated facility for waste disposal that generally handles used electronics as well as used oil, recycling, etc. You'll have to pay a fee. Deal with it. Charities don't exist to get rid of your trash for you. Story 22. The thing that's most donated is clothes. I used to work at GoodWill, and the amount of garbage clothes that we literally just threw in the compactor is crazy. Side note, just because you think your stuff is worth something doesn't mean it is. Example, this family of 3 tried to donate like 30 old picture frames. A lot were broken and crappy. There was one that was pretty cool, but that was it. When I told them we didn't want to take them, they were so surprised. Like, what, you won't take our old broken crap? Why? Story 23. Old appliances. Big fat TVs, as there are usually plenty flat screens available at all times. Refrigerators that cost more to power than it is to just keep buying new food, etc. Story 24. Didn't work at GoodWill, but at a large local thrift store. Damn sex toys. It was rare for a week where someone wouldn't try to give us a bag of stuff with a sex toy stuffed in the middle, or would just be like, here, take my sex doll. If the store didn't have a policy to check all items because of a substance's mishap years prior, we would have been stuck with them. No one wants your used sex toys, even if you cleaned them up. Story 25. Baby strollers. Most of us can't take them due to recalls and standards and crap. Also, literally anything you don't clean. Can you really not wash your crap out of this before tossing it at us? Also, so many people have a way to vague description of gently used, also alcohol, ammunition, and substances. Seriously. Story 26. Well, don't donate to GoodWill at all because they are evil, but don't donate your garbage. People take boxes from their garage or barn that's full of cat pee and roaches, and GoodWill workers have to sift through it for any sellable item. They have to because they have a quota of items to process. This includes digging through your trash and shining it up with Windex to look clean. People do this instead of taking it to the dump because they won't be charged by GoodWill. Story 27. Former GoodWill employee here, and where do I begin? Bug-infested furniture? If you need to get rid of it, then take it to a landfill and dispose of it properly. GoodWill has no use for your roaches and bedbugs. Dirty clothing. When donating clothes to GoodWill, make sure they're clean first. GoodWill doesn't wash the clothes that are donated to them. Garbage, items that are clearly broken. They're not a dump, just throw it away. I kid you not, someone once donated homework. It was graded and everything. Why? Story 28. I work next to a donation place. They throw a lot of mattresses and couches away. They say they take it so that people will feel good about donating. But if they're too worn or used, they go straight to the dumpster in the back. Story 29. I haven't donated in years. I post on Facebook what I have free to anybody who needs it. It's usually gone within the hour. I'd rather it you straight to the person who needs it instead of them spending money on something I was giving away for free anyway. Story 30. When I worked at a thrift store, a surprising amount of human ashes would be donated, sometimes by accident. People pass away, and sometimes when families are cleaning out houses, they just bring everything to charity shops without really paying attention. So probably that. Story 31. Expired food. I always ask them first if the food is still good. 90%, it's not. Honorable mention. Hangers. Every time someone asks if we take certain items, they phrase it as, do you take this? For hangers, even they know they're unwanted because they ask, do you need these? Story 32. I used to have an elderly woman who would drive up to my donation drive-thru every Monday and hand an empty pizza box to me. More confusing, she would normally return 10 minutes later with a cracked flower pot full of dirt. She was a strange woman. Story 33. Oddly enough, food. People will try to donate food to thrift stores, and we just cannot accept them for health reasons. This is a social advertising to donate any food to a food bank. Story 34. I do a shift a week at a charity shop. People should really stop trying to donate underwear, unless it's in an unopened pack. Also, unwashed clothes in general, particularly from people with a diarrhea problem, it just gets thrown away. And there's just too much to take home and wash. It's gross. Story 35. I worked at GoodWill for just over a month, and you would not believe the amount of underwear, mostly women's underwear, that would be donated. There once was a shift that I remember opening a medium-sized garbage bag up, and it was just filled with used, dirty women's underwear. Story 36. Sex toys? Seriously. We don't want your used sex toy. Even had a sex toy donated a month ago. I try to rationalize it for them and assume they think, well, it's still perfectly good, but just no. Also underwear and socks. Unless they're brand new, we can't use them. Story 37. Never worked GoodWill, but did work at a different secondhand store. Reusable maxi pads. This happened more than once, and I can only thank whatever is out there looking out for retail workers that we never found a dirty one. Stained, yes, but never dirty. Story 38. My aunt worked at a GoodWill, She helped take in a truckload from a guy in his mid-20 years old. After he left, all the boxes was filled with household items, but had old Playboys, adult DVDs, and some sex toys. Story 39. As someone who once bought a cute pair of boots without trying them on, I'll say your pipe hidden in the toe of a shoe. I'm very lucky I saw it and didn't jam my foot into the glass. Story 40. Underwear, bras, ripped or stained or unwashed clothing. It's so freaking gross sorting through clothing bins with that crap. We throw it all away. Also, stop giving us electronics that you definitely know are broken. We don't test them at our location. Story 41. Work with a clothing charity. Hate getting those generic t-shirts they give you at marathons, school events, family reunions, etc. Who is going to wear those? Nobody. Also, used underwear. Ick. Story 42. I do not work at GoodWill, but at Savers, which is a New England version of GoodWill. But people need to stop donating fricking guitars, those stupid plastic guitar for that game. Story 43. Dirty pillows. Pretty much every day someone will donate really gross yellowed and brown pillows. Once someone donated a pillow that had a bunch of blood on it. Story 44. I don't work at GoodWill, but I do work at a thrift store. Please stop donating garbage, broken things, stained clothing, dead birds, used sex toy, and broken toys. Just to name a few. Story 45. 7 years late, but I would imagine nowadays the big, bulky TV sets. Flat screens have become so cheap in the past few years that I can't even imagine people still have these massive TV sets. Donation center workers of Reddit, what's the most disturbing thing someone has ever donated? Story 1. Kittens in a box, wrapped up in a blanket, in with a bunch of boxes of other stuff, dropped off early one morning. It was sad because they were covered in fleas and had gooey eyes. But the shelter workers all took a kitten or two home. They all ended up with good homes, including one named Teddy that lives at the shelter now. We tell the kids at the shelter that it shows that just because he was dropped off there doesn't mean that he's not cool, and he's has gone on to have a very happy life. Story 2. Wash anything you buy, sort your stuff, keep it clean and dry, people are weird. I worked at a Salvation Army for 2 years. I handled clothes and took donations. Biggest conclusion I've drawn from it, you can learn about a person by the stuff they donate. If you buy something from a thrift store, wash it. People are just outright disgusting. However, my immune system is incredible because of working there. The Salvation Army I was at was based in a town where wealthy executives lived and where super rural rednecks lived and worked. So we had an interesting combination of donations. And most importantly, sort your stuff. Salvation Armies have a system. It works. It's a pain in the ass when I had to pick toys out of bags clothes. Don't mix towels with clothes or gloves, hats and scarves with clothes, and shoes with clothes. It's a hassle. Don't put your clothes on hangers either. We have people who are there to hang up clothes. Biggest thing? Keep your clothes dry. I can't emphasize this enough. Wet clothes get thrown out with no exceptions. I had to throw away an Armani suit because it was wet. If you have books, put them in boxes, not bags. Or if you're like one lady, load up a pickup truck bed full of them. That did happen. I nearly walked out that night. Last thing, and this is just me. If I'm closing the donation area and you pull up with a single bag of clothes, I'll take it if you're polite. You realized your mistake and don't insist. If you pull up with a van full of stuff and make up excuses, not my problem. Below is a list of things that were donated. Some were cool, others disgusting, and some just plain weird. 5 boxes of shotgun cartridges, sex toys not in boxes. So glad I wore gloves. A deer head that I had to mount to the wall, a suit coat with $2,500. If there was no one around, I would have taken it. And I know, but it would have been nice to put some money away and not worry about bills. A bag of clothes that reeked of paint thinner. Even better, I got a full whiff of this in an enclosed room. A very serious-looking compound bow with the arrows. The arrows didn't have any tips, thankfully. Yes, we did fire a test shot. Yes, it was awesome. A cotton candy machine that looked like it hadn't seen the sun in 5 years, with the sugar packages. A suit coat with a car dealer's pay stubs. He was the owner, and he was taking home $12,000 per pay period, after taxes. A lot of Armani and Burberry clothing. Again, town where wealthy people lived. Story 3. Worked at GoodWill for a short time a while back. Found a lot of old crap, like crap nobody would want. Very old picture frames coming apart, old bikes rusted through, metal. Shrapnel is the best way I could describe it. Most disturbing. Probably books about very heavy conspiracy theories. Found some dude's high school diploma. Saddest. Nothing was ever washed, so we'd get a lot of clothes stained. Had a crackhead come in and try to sell his jacket so he could buy a new one in the store. I always came home filthy. And even for a while, my work clothes reeked of old, donated goods. We had to test all the vacuums in the back, and one day I turned on one of those shop vacs and a huge puff of dust exploded from the exhaust into my face. Another vacuum stunk so bad my manager had my fee breeze the crap out of the back room. It legit smelled like the previous owner had been vacuuming up dog crap. Also found a book that was supposedly given to an addict. The inside read, "Name, I hope you recover from this. We wish you the best. Love, Mom and Dad." That one was depressing. Story 4. Oh, my time to shine. Box full of used sex toys. Peter Meter shot glass to measure wang size with fully loaded guns. Met at least 3 times, and my personal favorite. Our poor dead guy Gregory. He's a box of ashes that we have to keep in the cash room because we have to wait for loss control or whoever to pick him up. He's been with us for over a year now because no one from corporate ever takes him. And myself and quite a few coworkers are very fond of him. Anytime we get a new cashier, we make sure to introduce them to Greg. And anytime something weird happens, well, it was probably Gregory's ghost. Gregory got a pet dog. Her name is Gigi, not quite sure. She didn't have a name on her box, only a photo, so our supervisor named her. But I'm so happy for Greg, and I just had to update for anyone who will read this in the future. Story 5. Work donations in college, small town. Someone donated a boombox, but I guess they forgot about their little baggie of Met hidden in the CD compartment. Story 6. Was reading through this again, and these were some of the people I dealt with when I handled donations. The craziest times were spring, summer, and New Year's Eve. While I hated the work, I miss 85% of the people I worked with. We had a lot of fun. We had the random lady who offered sexual favors for $20. The hilarious thing is she ran for the town council. The old lady who pulled up during a heavy downpour with a pickup truck bed full of stuff, uncovered. There was the lady in my other post I mentioned who had a pickup truck bed full of books. I nearly walked out, but I had a kick-ass manager who assisted. Any other manager? I would have done it. Because my store was in a wealthy area, we had a lot of wealthy donors. One guy was moving. He must have made at least 10 trips that summer. He had a lot of toys, clothes, and other items to get rid of. You could always tell if the husband, boyfriend, was being put up to cleaning up. Either they just said, "Wife said I had to," or their general demeanor. Old boxy TVS are a nightmare to move. Heavy, awkward, and just a hassle. And those were the 28-inch ones. Finally, destroying things with sledgehammers is fun. Very fun. Story 7. I work in a thrift store. I am the person who opens up and prices all the donations that come in. I would guess that almost half of what I see is literal garbage. Broken dishes, chipped doodads, non-working electronics, and so much more. Some days it seems like it's all garbage. On the weird side, boxes of sex toys are common. I find pills and other substances. Please take note. We don't want your used sex toy. The saddest donations are all the old family photos we get. I wonder why no one wanted them. We also find money. The last big haul was found in the toe of a boot. It was around $3,000. Other clothes came in from the same donation, and we found hundreds more in the pockets. Another large find was tucked into the folds of an old blanket. It was almost thrown away, but we shook it out and it rained money. We do get a lot of nice donations as well. Story 8. A used sex toy with crap caked on them still, dirty needles, so many poopy diapers and underwear and just plain nastiness. Once a lady dropped off a bag of literal trash, pulled up in an Audi wearing a crisp pantsuit, unloaded a black bag full of rotting food and tampons and crap, and drove away. My favorite was a small paper bag full of ID cards from different people. A green card for a Mexican baby, birth certificates, driver's licenses, college ID cards. You name it, it was in there, and none of them were for the same 2 people. I asked if we should call the cops since it was super suspicious, but nope, they just shredded it all. There were also 2 little taxidermied mice wearing outfits I wish I would have kept. A watch worth several thousand I wish I would have also stolen, and an African statue of a man making a duck face with a comically large boner that we were not allowed to sell. Fun job, but I hated the manager. If she were dying of thirst in the desert, I wouldn't piss on her to save her life. Story 9. I volunteered at a community thrift store when I was in my do-gooder phase. Well, someone left a box in front of the store that said GoodWill. I'm sure there are protocols in place for donations. Well, one of the cashiers thought nothing of it and picked up the box and put it in the box. They had me shadow someone, and that person has the misfortune of having to sift through the donations and determine if they were usable. Well, as soon as we opened the box, this foul smell hit us like a ton of bricks. It smelled like crap and old cheese and death. Well, that's because there was an old diaper with crap at the bottom of the box. Also, a pair of pants had old cheese melted to it. We just threw the box out. I don't know if these people mistook their garbage box with the GoodWill box, but it was not fun. Story 10. Not quite disturbing as it is interesting, but W.E. I volunteered at a second chance op shop once. They trusted my judgment of culling books. So this big box of books came in from someone who recently passed, and their family knew that was what she would have wanted. So I go ahead and start pawing through, throwing out things that were too ruined for sale, donating the stuff that wasn't high enough quality for us, but not terrible enough for another place, etc. Then I start to slowly notice a trend of this person's books. How to tell if you're being mentally abused, how to deal with divorce, dating after 50, Jenny Craig handbook. It was weird, as if I was going through her life story through her books. She also had a lot of romance novels scattered throughout. Story 11. Worked at GoodWill for 2 years. Lots of odds and ends. Getting some home-done taxidermic birds that were just off was a weird one. Lots of weird sex books. But the saddest donation was this college kid who handed over a tote along with other stuff and said they were Christmas ornaments. After he'd left, I was sorting everything and opened the tote. It was a bunch of high school paraphernalia, like a letterman's jacket, yearbooks, and their diploma. We had to sort it because we had no way of getting it back to him. I left out the diploma, hoping he'd return. I came back the next day and someone had sorted it. Poor guy came back that next day looking for the diploma. I felt so freaking bad because I'm sure GoodWill just shredded it or something. Also, no one wants your used underwear. Just throw them away. Story 12. Used adult diaper, a pecan pie, a dead turtle, a pan with freshly cooked meat, and I told a woman we don't take baby furniture due to recalls. Anyways, and threw a bag of clothes on the ground and drove off. Not really disturbing, just odd. A lady thought we washed all our clothing before it went out on the floor. Story 13. Used to work at Value Village. Found 2 guns, a garbage bag full of sex toys, 1 unique adult magazine of extremely ripped women, 300 VH adult films from the 17th. Story 14. Not disturbing in the regular sense, but I volunteer in a charity shop in a fairly wealthy area, and people donate clothes with the tag on that are 200 pounds for a damn jumper or some crap. It's ridiculous what people just give away without a thought. Recently, we got 2 Hugo Boss suits that were 800 pounds each new. Doc Martens and Timberland boots are really common. Bench, Hollister, Jack Wills. We get all the time. Lots of French Connection, and Michael Kors bags. We're really lucky that we can send the cheaper stuff we get into other stores and run more like a vintage shop. A lot of people still donate their underwear, though. That goes straight to recycling. Story 15. Currently work in donation center. Sex toys. Sex yours everywhere. Also, soiled underwear, both fecal and genital excretions. Sanitary towels have popped up now and again. Although one donation in particular stands out to me. Can't remember where the donation came from. As we get raw donations from other stores when they're overflowing and need to make space. But out of this bag came a very sticky copy of 50 Shades of Grey with a black whip and blindfold. Suffice to say, we were a mix of disgusted and amused. Story 16. People donate disgusting things, like absolute trash. I worked at GoodWill, and people would leave boxes that are falling apart from being pissed on by animals. Boxes full of roaches, alive and dead. The area we sorted in was not air-conditioned or ventilated in any way, so at the height of summer, everything smelled like piss. You couldn't shower enough to get the smells out. The saddest ones were wedding pictures, like old pictures. You can tell someone died and that their relatives dumped all the belongs not worth money at GoodWill rather than sort through them. We can't sell wedding pictures, so into the dumpster it all went. Story 17. My close relative worked at a thrift store. Her coworker found a gun in a sock, presumably belonging to an elder who passed away since there were old coins and such in the belongings. The gun went off when he jiggled it out of the sock and fatality ended for her. I go to thrifts now and then, but it's not the same to me. Story 18. Used to work for GoodWill. I saw a bunch of nasty crap. Bed bugs on comforters and they would crawl all over you. Computer monitors from 1999 with deodorant smeared all over the screen. They didn't even miss a spot. Underwear with period streaks, not period stains. Streaks like their period started when they were riding a mechanical bull. Crap stains on a lot of random objects. One time we had a purse with a tampon that had been used, but the person had put it back in the wrapper in a side pocket. I need to go wash my hands again. Story 19. A disturbing amount of people donate literal bags of garbage. Like they think less fortunate people can somehow build something nifty from their empty cereal boxes. No ma'am, we cannot sell your almost empty bottle of hand soap. Story 20. We have one of those Hannah home donation centers that's really just 2 trailers and a bin that's supposed to be for clothes only. The whole town treats it like a free landfill. Just piles of actual garbage everywhere. They actually had to move the trailers once because they were too close to the main road, and people were starting to complain. They put them in the parking lot of what used to be a church next to a Fred's, which if you don't know, is the world's most depressing store. Story 21. We've gotten a lot of dirty sex toys donated. One time a lady handed me a trash bag full of foil yogurt lids, smiled like it was a bag of pure gold, and walked off. People also donate used pads, tampons in the dressing room and just leave them there. Story 22. You'd be surprised at how many people use food banks as a charitable compost bin. Leftovers, expired food products, and any food product that has been tampered with, opened, will be thrown out before delivering them to people in need. In fact, it's better to just donate money as food banks have better purchasing power, especially since they buy in bulk. Story 23. I volunteered in a charity shop in my last year of school, and while no one donated anything disturbing, we did have some weird people come in. Someone came in saying that he was looking for clothing for a stag do, grabbed a load of items, and disappeared into the changing room. He emerged 5 minutes later in nothing but a lady's thong, balls dangling out of the side, and walked around the entire shop to check that it was a good fit, of course. Story 24. I used to work at a homeless shelter. Someone once donated a box of handmade knit bikinis. What the heck? Also saw a box of donated adult film once. I'm sure the clients would have loved it, but no. Story 25. Our family donates clothes in masses and put them in one of those giant black trash bags. My dad took the bag to the Salvation Army, and when he got back, he noticed the bag of clothes was sitting in the living room. He dropped of an actual bag of trash at the Salvation Army. He then went back and apologized and donated the right bag. He hasn't gone back since. Story 26. I worked at GoodWill a couple years back, and the weirdest thing I saw was a rather impressive collection of sex toy. Story 27. Don't know if this counts as a donation per se, but my friend who is a manager at another branch opened the store and found a heart chillin' in a cooler in the parking lot. Our store definitely got sex toy, creepy pictures, double-headed taxidermied animals, and one time, a life-size human-shaped chair with arms and legs as, well, the legs of the chair. This makes me miss working there. Story 28. Volunteered for a little bit. Always understood that the previous owners of a lot of these items are likely dead, the remnants of the recently passed, sorted, gawked at, and sifted through by random strangers. Story 29. Some assless chaps in leather and latex bondage wear. Not super disturbing, just not sure what made her think it would be possible to sell them on. Please consider what you're donating. If it's damaged or soiled, it generally can't be sold on. Most charity and secondhand stores have at most a steam cleaner, so dirty clothes will have to be dumped, recycled. Story 30. I did something like this. I went to an alternative bookstore and found The Joy of Male Sex, complete with diagrams and everything. I was so curious that I bought and read parts of it. I was too embarrassed to bring it home, so dropped in the library donation chute. Conservative town. Story 31. A briefcase, stuffed full of Polaroid pictures of escorts, squatting in alleys, in hotel rooms, anywhere really. Otherwise, the briefcase was unmarked. There must have been 200 pictures in that thing. It ended up in the garbage as we all decided it was best not to keep touching it. That, and a surprising amount of used sex toys. Story 32. Work at a thrift store with a large donation sorting facility. About a year ago, the plant had to be shut down for a few hours because someone had donated a box full of grenades and a rocket launcher, all neatly wrapped in a tote of clothes and tools. Story 33. A dead hamster in a cage, adult film, a skunk sleeping in bag, a copy of the Quran to a Christian thrift shop, countless bags of dirty underwear, used maxi pads. I now own a really sweet sex toy that I got for free because we don't sell stuff like that. Story 34. I don't work there, but I visit GoodWill bi-weekly for cheap books. Our GoodWill has a massive section that holds hundreds of books. One shelf had over 100 short romance stories, the ones old and lonely woman buy to dream of hot and shirtless dude on the cover. It was creepy. Story 35. I worked at a resource center for needy families. We got a men's jacket with red liquid all over the collar. We got a super nice baby doll, lingerie thing, thong and all. My Guatemalan boss didn't understand and thought it was for cleaning, bless her. Story 36. Well, besides sex toys that found a way there, I'd have to say dead bird wrapped in a coat. Other than that mostly incredibly dirty stuff because people just donate full boxes they find in their basement or garage with even looking inside to see what is being donated. Story 37. I volunteered at a thrift store a couple of times in high school, sorting through crap. I would take the clothes that were Abercrombie, American Eagle, Hollister, crap like that. Story 38. I work at a shelter, but thought this was relevant. A couple weeks ago, amongst old baby clothes in a duffel bag, was donated the largest purple sex toy I have ever seen. Used. Story 39. One time donated a diaper filled with poop. It was in a box with a bunch of clothes. Was a rough day. One time someone also donated like 4 bags of clothes that had been sprayed by a cat. Was also a rough day. Story 40. A chocolate mold. They were junk-shaped. It was hilarious and awesome. But someone chucked it out before I got to it. It was a religious organization. Story 41. We've gotten live fish, copious amounts of sex toy, and a handful of substances. Oh, and also maggots. Lots of maggots, almost a whole cube van full of tainted goods. Story 42. I worked at a cancer research shop, and it's not the most disturbing, but dirty baby clothes. It's annoying and gross when people do it, and it happens fairly often, and no one damn wants your filthy baby vests and onesies.